Hi, Natasha. Welcome to the Arthritis Life Podcast.
Hi, Cheryl. How are you? Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much. I'm great. I'm excited to hear more about your story. So can you just give us a quick introduction and explain a little bit of your relationship to arthritis?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Natasha. I'm 18 years old. I live in Toronto, Canada. I attend the University of Ottawa for biomedical sciences and French immersion. So I am a first-year student, and it's definitely a little bit of a challenge, but it's fun. My relationship to arthritis started in 2016 when I was 13. I was playing tennis. I really liked tennis as a child. So I was playing tennis, and all of a sudden, I could not lift up the tennis racket anymore. And the tennis ball was so hard to even pick up or play with. And everyone around me, they were really supportive, but I just didn't know what was going on. My fingers started to swell up, my wrist started hurting, and I was like, I'm just going to tennis class to play, and everything's hurting now all of a sudden. So my parents actually took me, well, I had to kind of convince them that this was more than just a sprain. Everyone thought it was a sprain. So I was complaining to my friend at school, and she was like, you have to get this checked out. So I went to the doctor, did some blood tests, x-rays, that fun stuff, and then got diagnosed with juvenile idiopathic arthritis.
Wow. And was that a shock to you and your family when you got that diagnosis?
Yes, I remember my mom was picking me up from school in grade 8, and she was we were in the parking lot, and she told me, and I literally started crying because I was like, I have no clue what this is, but it sounds really bad. So I started crying. It was a shock to everyone in my family because we don't have any genetics or anyone in our family history that had arthritis that we know of. So it's kind of like a shock knowing that, a 13-year-old child of ours has arthritis and we have no idea. I was a really healthy kid as well. I wasn't eating candy every single day all day. So it was like, what's happening?
Yeah, no, I think that's such a common response, especially for people that, like you mentioned, you're really active, you're taking good care of your health. And then to just be hit with this diagnosis seemingly out of nowhere, especially when you were thinking, like your parents were thinking, oh, and most people would think, oh, a 13-year-old with hand pain, it's probably a sprain. And that's actually when I was 20 and I started having hand symptoms. And I was a soccer player, even though we don't use our hands, but I assumed that I just fell on my hand and forgot. I just was like, oh, this is just some injury. Your mind doesn't go to an autoimmune disease that causes, arthritis in the joints. And I'm curious a little more about how you adjusted to the diagnosis and what were some of the treatments that you tried as you, right after you're diagnosed.
So it honestly took a really long time to find a medication that worked for me. It's been 5 years. Actually, it's probably my 5-year anniversary sometime this month. But it took a really long time to find a medication that worked for me. I tried first prednisone, which is a steroid, methotrexate, Humira, some biologics, tocilizumab. We kind of reached the adult medications where it was nothing's working. We don't know what to do. And thankfully, after 3.5 years, my pediatric rheumatologist was like, let's get joint injections because at least it'll kind of reduce what's there physically. So we did that and it definitely did help, but joint injections only stay for a while. So it helped. And in the meantime, we were kind of looking around for other medications. Someone brought up something called triple therapy. So I am currently on that and it has been working. I did have to get joint injections again, unfortunately, this year. But with this combination, it's really been helping me a lot. So I'm on methotrexate, sulfasalazine, and Plaquenil, which everyone probably knows about Plaquenil because of COVID. But yeah, those are the 3 meds I'm on in terms of kind of the medication portion of how I have adapted to it.
Wow. And that is a lot for 5 years. I know that doctors are trying to study with better, it's called precision medicine to figure out why do some people for me, when I was put on what's called a TNF inhibitor, tumor necrosis factor inhibitor, Enbrel, alongside methotrexate, I did really well for the first 7 years. And some people try a TNF inhibitor, like you tried Humira, and it doesn't work. The doctors want to figure out before they put you through trying one that's not going to work, what is the difference between the people who it works for and the people who it doesn't? And unfortunately, it's just not really known right yet completely. But I'm so glad that the triple therapy works. It's good to mention the triple therapy because I know I do a lot of education and kind of a sharing of my story with biologics working well for me, but they don't work for everyone. So like you mentioned, and I wanted to circle to really quick. I'm sorry. I want to make sure we explain what joint injections are. Were those cortisone injections?
Exactly. Yeah. So when I was, I think in grade 10, so I'm in university right now, I was given joint injections. So I was put under anesthesia. What they did was they put like corticosteroid injections into my joints. And I actually had prednisone, like the liquid version of it. Before that didn't work, but they were like, if you physically put it in like steroids in your joints, it might be better because you're actually like putting it directly there. It hurts like crazy. Like if you can handle that, you can handle anything in your life. But yeah, I did that twice actually. So you're not supposed to have so many joints, but at that point they were so desperate to get swelling under control. So I had them all injected with steroids.
Yeah. I've only ever I had one injection in my base, the ball of my foot, and one in the base of my thumb. And those are hard to do because they're such tiny areas, but I was awake for both of those. But it sounds like you're saying that were you under anesthesia for both?
No. So since I was like a kid and the first time I had it, and so that was when I was like at Sick Kids, the hospital in Toronto. And then I had 10 joints injected. So that was like, you had to undergo anesthesia. But the recent one was obviously I was 18. So they referred me to an adult rheumatologist and she did it. And she did it really well. Like I was terrified because of the first experience, but it went pretty well.
Oh, that's so good. You've been through a lot. Gosh. And I wanted to ask about how it might have affected your social life. Like, I mean, just in the last 5 years between 13 and 18, what were some of like the highs and the lows? I don't want to just say lows, but I'm sure that there were some highs and lows about like, explaining it to friends or people maybe understanding or not understanding.
Yeah. So what I did alongside medication was eating healthy and incorporating like a healthy lifestyle. And I think that was the hardest part to explain to people because it's like, you're a teenager and you want to hang out with your friends, eat that pizza, but you can't eat it. And so that was the most challenging part. But my friends in high school were so accommodating and they really tried to understand. So they came up with so many alternative things you could do. Like we could bring our own lunches so I wouldn't feel left out. And then just like activity wise. So they're really nice. I think my fear now is I'm going to university and I'm in university, but when I go in person, I have to like re-explain my life story again, which is, kind of hard sometimes because you don't want to go through the same thing. But in terms of like social life, I think my friends have been really, really helpful and accommodating. There are people out there that haven't been the nicest, and that's okay. Like, that's why I don't talk to them, is what I'd say. But yeah, I think in terms of like food and the things that I can and can't do, my friends always accommodate me, which is really nice of them.
That's so great, because people have asked me, especially about drinking, like drinking alcohol, because it was the age of drinking 18 in Canada?
It's 19, so not there yet.
19. Oh, okay. Yeah, because people ask me about peer pressure, and I'm sure they'll ask you too about, when you're on methotrexate, you're not supposed to drink very much alcohol. And I always said, my friends didn't make a big deal out of it. I got diagnosed right after I was 21. So that's the legal drinking age here. But I just would go to the same parties as everyone else. I just would drink water or Sprite or, but some people say, oh, that's not the norm, or, that's too much of like a Pollyanna story. I'm like, well, it's my story. That's the reality that I lived. And so it's good to know that you have, and my friends have always been really accommodating too. So I feel like I don't have as much of a kind of, what's the word, like rocky story as some people. So it's good to hear another story of, hey, sometimes friends are good friends. And I'm really glad you have a good pack. It's true what they say. Canadians are really nice. No, just kidding.
To add on what you just said about like the alcohol part, like I haven't experienced that yet, and it might happen. And so when it does happen, I need to be an advocate. Like I haven't experienced it where my friends have said anything or anyone, and my friends know my medications and they know like how it kind of works. But in the future, right, I'm going to make more friends and they're obviously gonna be like, hey, like, let's go out for a drink. And I need to kind of stand my ground at that point, but it's not there yet.
Yeah. And you also like, or I'll just give a little unsolicited advice for anyone listening. Like sometimes we want to do so much advocacy about our condition. but we don't always need to explain the whole reason. Sometimes, like I would just say, oh, it interacts with my medication. I don't need to explain that it's medication for rheumatoid arthritis, and the rheumatoid arthritis isn't just arthritis, blah, 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 blah. Like, of course, being me, I always do talk too long and too much, but I sometimes have found it's easier just to be like, oh yeah, I can't have it right now because my medication, but I'm still hanging out. And most people, I mean, again, most people, it's like people are worried about themselves. Like most people are kind of self-centered. So they're kind of like, oh, okay, more alcohol for me,
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And you mentioned, healthy eating as one of the ways that you help manage your condition. Can you explain a little more about like, how did you find the non-medicinal ways to manage? I'm curious because there are so many, right? Like I always say, I get overwhelmed. Is it vegan? Is it anti-inflammatory general diet? Is it Mediterranean? Like what's going to work for me? So how did you discover what eating pattern worked for you and what other lifestyle changes helped?
I would definitely say it's all my mom. She figured everything out for me. I did absolutely no work or effort to figure out what would work. So credit to my mom. But aside from that, we tried everything, like honestly, everything. We went to India to try, like, there's something called Ayurvedic medicine. Yes. So we tried that. We tried acupuncture, homeopathy, naturopathy, like everything possible. We spent money and tried it. And at the end, what I realized was it was just like, exercise, which I suck at, but that healthy eating and alongside medication, like I realized it did take a really long time to figure it out. And in the past, like 5 years, we kind of tried everything. And so right now I am vegan, gluten-free. I don't have any processed oils in my diet, and I try to stay away from sugar. So that's helped, and it's actually helped a lot. Like I feel like I can really move now. Like I would say 5 years ago, I could not move, and now I can walk, I can dance, I can do what I want to do with the healthy diet. So, and it's not even diet. People don't like the term diet, so I'd say lifestyle change.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I know I'm trying to change it to say like eating pattern or nutrition, because I don't like the word diet. Yeah, that's so vegan and no processed oil and not a lot of added sugar. Can you eat fruit, like natural sugars? Oh, good. Yeah, okay, sorry.
I also am gluten-free, so that's been it's a challenge, but honestly, you can make such good food. And I don't cook, so my mom makes such good food. So I'm just like, honestly, everything's because of her. And she's really supportive. She's also on the same diet as me, so I don't feel like I'm alone. So she's been doing that. And my family's kind of incorporated like vegan, but my brother goes to school and there's food there, so he just eats whatever, but he really tries. Like when we're at home, we don't bring anything to the house. So
yeah. Oh, that's so wonderful. And I've studied as an occupational therapist. What are the factors that help people maintain the healthy lifestyle changes for all conditions, chronic conditions, whether it's, juvenile idiopathic arthritis or diabetes. And it is having family support or loved one support, the people in your immediate living environment, like makes the difference for so many people. So yeah, I've been gluten-free, and, I always say I don't notice a difference with my joints, unfortunately, but I do notice a difference with my digestion. And I do know that the gut and the autoimmune system are very closely connected. So potentially if I went back on gluten, it would be worse. I'm not positive, but it wasn't like, some people go gluten-free and then 4 weeks later, they're like, oh, I can move, like it wasn't dramatic like that for me, but I'm so glad it works for you, along with being vegan and low processed oil, and low sugar. That's I still need to try that. I don't eat I do try not to overdo it with sugar, but I definitely don't underdo it either.
It won't be like, just like the normal sugar. And like, I wouldn't go and eat candies and stuff, but sometimes when you have like gluten-free and like vegan cereals, they put coconut sugar sometimes. And so like, that is not the end of the world. I'm not on that right now. Like right now I just eat like very clean, because over the summer, I ate some like wrong things, and that really hit hard. And it wasn't like an easy process to figure out the diet, healthy lifestyle change.
Sorry.
Yes. It took like a really long time. And now I kind of know, like, if I eat something not as healthy, I know how to go back and I know how my body works. So that's what I've realized.
Yes. No, that's so amazing. Like I know we had the most popular episode of this podcast is the one on like myth versus fact for diet and nutrition with for rheumatic disease. And we had Christina Montoya, who has rheumatoid arthritis, and she's a registered dietitian, and a couple other Jennifer Thorani, who's the chronic pain nutritionist, and both of them make and Kia Peters too, but they make a really big point to say that, you know, there is no one size fits all. Like the triggers are very individualized. So sometimes people are interested in trying a healthy eating pattern and they try one and it doesn't work. And then they like throw out the whole idea of nutrition and eating patterns because they're like, well, I tried, you know, the autoimmune protocol and it didn't work. So no diets are going to work or no nutrition plans are going to work. But it's actually like, okay, if you try one, it doesn't work, there are still others to try. You know, so
For sure.
full soapbox. Yeah.
I really like the elimination process. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's hard to deal with, but definitely like, you know, adding foods to see what happens. I think in my experience, I found that to be really helpful to figure out what works for me. But you're right. Not everyone's body has the same lifestyle change that it could actually have a positive effect on. So it's definitely important to not give up.
Yeah. I mean, it really sounds like your mom is like the VIP here, but you're also a VIP, a very important person for sticking with it, because there are definitely people who, you know, when, especially in their teen years, if their mom was trying to help them with, you know, nutrition and lifestyle changes, they would be like, stop, mom, I don't want to, you know, so give yourself some credit too.
It was really hard. I mean, like, especially 13, I literally ate everything. Like, even if it was like, if it was healthy, like I could still eat like, you know, cheese, like things people would eat. And it was definitely hard to, you know, be like, okay, I can't eat this anymore. And so like my friend, what she did, we had pizzas on Fridays at school. She literally turned around, eat her pizza, and then
that's
my own pizza. So because she felt so bad for me. But like, it was a hard thing to do, but I realized how much it's actually helped me. So I just, you know, been sticking with it.
That's especially if there's a severe relationship between the food you eat and a flare up, it makes it easier actually to stick with it. That's how I am with my stomach too. When I've accidentally had gluten, I'm like, oh, I feel so awful. You know, my stomach is just totally just bloated. And so, yeah, it makes it easier. And then I know that you've done some other lifestyle changes like, you know, meditation or stress relief. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah. So I was always really stressed when growing up, like everything stressed me out. Like my brother, he always stressed me out for no reason. Like he didn't bring back his lunch bag or something from school. I'd be stressed about it. And I feel like if I think about like what kind of triggered my arthritis, I'd say like potentially stress, because I was always stressed in general. And a lot of things, like I moved from public school to private school, which was like a totally different change. And I don't know, my sister kind of introduced me to like mindfulness and like meditation, and she does it a lot when she's stressed. And so I listened to someone, his name is Deepak Chopra, and he kind of like collabs with like Oprah and like, you know, a bunch of other celebrities. And it's really interesting because I had like a routine of doing it. Obviously school's busy. Sometimes you forget, but you know, I think listening to, it's just 20 minutes. So just listening to it at night is something that I do. And I feel like so much better when I'm stressed when I listen to it. And especially like first they talk for like 10 minutes and then they have like just music, like calm, peaceful music. And it's not long at all. And you kind of like, you know, fall asleep at the same time. So it's really nice. So I've been practicing that. I also think that I'm less stressed than I used to be, only because I find things that I like doing. Like I like singing, I like music. And so I've been trying to do that more often. And I find that when I do something that I like, I feel less stressed. And so those are kind of the things that I've been working on and doing to make sure that, you know, my mental health is okay.
That's so great. I really loved your point about like that stress relief doesn't always have to be about like, I'm going to do X activity in order to feel less stressed. Like I'm going to meditate to feel less stressed, which that's one approach. But another one is like, you know, like they say, happiness is a side effect of engaging in something that you find enjoyable, right? So you don't just say, I'm going to do this to be happy. You're like, oh, I enjoy singing. And then the effect of that is, feeling a better sense of well-being and a sense of, happiness and decreased stress. But sometimes I don't know, this is just my personality. Maybe it's because I'm a little bit type A, but when I used to try to do things like specifically to feel less stressed, it would be counterproductive because I'd be like, I need to just meditate for 10 minutes and I'm going to feel better. And then I would try and then I'd be like, I don't feel better. This is dumb. And it's funny because my son is the exact same way. Like we've tried things like, when he was younger, like maybe 5 or 6, we do like, let's take 5 deep breaths when he was feeling angry. And then afterwards he'd be like, I don't feel better. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're so similar to me, So I think it's, again, just knowing your personality and knowing what works. But like in occupational therapy, we call it like engaging in meaningful activity, which is like just a flowery way of saying like doing stuff that you like, that you find meaningful. And I do think that after having an autoimmune disease or rheumatic disease, sometimes people get so caught up in like being the perfect patient and like finding the perfect healthy lifestyle that they forget to do the things they love. So I love that. Do you sing like in a choir or anything, or just on your own?
So I've been singing since I was really young, and I went to lessons and stuff. So I went to a specialized like vocal high school. And so that was really fun. For 4 years, I just like sang with my friends. I made like the best friends there because we all had like similar talents and passions. So we did like choir competitions, singing competitions. I've done those. And I sing for like festivals sometimes. So it's been really fun. Definitely, like, because I'm studying science right now, I don't get that much time to sing because it's so busy, but I make an effort, like go to singing classes every Saturday because I'm at home. And I find that that's like the day where I feel so much better. And it's not because I don't go there because I'm stressed that I need to sing. It's because I like singing and it's just like a part of my routine now. And so I've been singing for a while and it's really fun. A lot of people don't know that about me because I'm just like podcasting instead.
I was going to say, wait a minute, season 4, all singing podcast. No.
But yeah, it's definitely one of my passions and I really enjoy it.
Oh, that is so cool. What style is like your favorite? Like, do you sing like pop music or?
I really like pop music. I also sing sometimes like some Indian songs. I listen to a lot. And I also did like classical singing in high school. So I don't love classical music, but it is something that I sing all the time because I do like exams sometimes. And so, but I definitely would say pop music is my thing. It's probably because it's always on the radio and I always like listening to the radio.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm the same. Yeah. I love pop music. That's so great. I do think music can be very therapeutic, even if you're not singing, just listening to music.
Exactly.
There's some really interesting music therapy research on like the effect of music on like our stress relief, or even if you look at people with like advanced Alzheimer's, they might sometimes not like recognize people or be able to regulate their mood very well. But when you put music on, they can like immediately change their emotional state. It's really fascinating. So yeah, I didn't know that about you. That's so cool. And so earlier you mentioned like going to India to try Ayurvedic medicine and that you sometimes you sing classical, Indian songs. And one of the things I want to just acknowledge that I've talked about earlier in the podcast with like Sukhjeen from Chronically Brown and Saruthi from Fighting Rheumatoid Arthritis is just that the chronic illness communities online are like very like predominantly white and female. So is there anything you would want to share with the audience just about, what it's like being someone of like, Indian background with this disease?
I think that, like you mentioned, I don't see that many Indian women or girls out there kind of portraying or explaining their chronic illness. And it's really important that we do that. And I think that was sort of one of the things on why the podcast Take a Pain Check was created. And we can kind of go into that later, but it was because we mostly we see more, white people, not brown people. And it's hard sometimes because sometimes you feel like there's superiority or inferiority, and it's really hard. But I think in terms of the support that I've gotten, nothing has changed. I feel like in the community, everyone's very inclusive. So even though you're of a different race or ethnicity or background, no matter what, everyone is very inclusive in the chronic illness community. Just very hard sometimes to find people out there with the same background or ethnicity as you, but that doesn't mean that you aren't supported and you're not equally as important. So I haven't found like any barriers to that.
That's really good to hear. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I did want to give you a chance to tell the audience about your podcast, and your nonprofit, Take a Pain Check. Can you explain a little bit more about what inspired you to start Take a Pain Check?
Yeah, for sure. So this is in March of 2021. And prior to that, the other co-founder of Take a Pain Check, Trish Peters, and we were volunteering as tag leaders, which is like a teen arthritis group leader for Cassie and Friends, a charity organization for youth. We came across many discussions about the fact that there are a lot of teenagers that don't know how to advocate for themselves. And that was a big challenge. And on top of that, we're both of Indian background and culture. So we're like, let's come together and do something. Like, we have a lot of similarities and we want to kind of, all the experiences that we went through, we felt like we needed to make kind of the world and the chronic illness community a better place and make sure that no one had to go through the same thing as we did. So in March of 2021, we launched a podcast, Take a Pain Check, with the goal was to really empower youth and young adults to advocate for themselves, and then also provide like resources and different perspectives and experiences. And so we hosted 26 approximately episodes together. And since September 2021, I have been hosting 5 podcasts, already have been completed by myself. So I'm the new host of Take a Pain Check. And 2 weeks ago, Take a Pain Check is now officially registered as a nonprofit charity organization. And I'm the founder for that. So that's been really interesting. And I'm excited to see kind of how it grows, because right now it's just a podcast. And I want to kind of see like what the direction will be, but I do think that it has helped a lot of people. So yeah.
That's amazing. I'm really just in awe of you. Again, I'm sure you hear this all the time, but at such a young age to have not only produced this podcast, but also, registered and successfully registered a nonprofit. That's a lot. That's a lot of accomplishments, along with, studying biomedical sciences, which I know is a very busy degree. So I think it's wonderful that you're, so passionate about helping teens. And I wanted to hear a little more about, you mentioned that a lot of teens didn't know how to advocate for themselves. Do you remember any examples of things that you heard them saying, or like examples of people not advocating for themselves very well?
So during some of the events that were held at Cassie and Friends during the pandemic, we found that a lot of people were not coming to our events because, first, it's online. Second, like no one really wanted to talk to each other because we felt like the loneliness for a really long time. So at the Toronto events online, no one really showed up. Like, it was just the organizers. And so we kind of came to a realization that it needs to be more than this. Like, we can't just be trying to host events and no one's coming to our events because, and what I've received from the podcast now are a lot of messages on Instagram and a lot of youth coming and saying like, this has really helped them a lot. And not even that, like some researchers have come up to me and said, like, we didn't even know there's a youth perspective and the youth think like this and young adults are having this perspective. Like, we're doing research on them, but we really enjoy hearing the other side of the story. And so I found that a lot of people have been really coming, to the forefront and saying and mentioning that this has really helped them advocate. There's one other person that I recently talked to, and she mentioned that she's been really in awe of Take a Pain Check and she wants to advocate now. And Take a Pain Check has helped her because, we're just teenagers living with rheumatic diseases, and a lot of teenagers and young adults are the same age as us. And when you see other young adults advocate, you're like, I want to do this too, because, I'm not as scared anymore. And so I found that in the past few months, a lot of people have been starting to do that. I don't know if it's because of me, but, some people have said that. And so, yeah.
That's incredible. No, and I think that's one of the best things about, this is going to sound really weird, but because I'm 40. Okay. So when I was diagnosed, the internet was not what it is now. Like, and there was no social media, like literally the year before like there was just like Facebook was just being invented, and I joined something called Friendster, which was like pre-Facebook, and there was MySpace, but like there just wasn't like it didn't even occur to me when I was diagnosed at age 21 to like go online and find someone else with my condition. Like I didn't know a single person with my condition for like 7 years until it got worse after my biologic wore off. So that's my story. But then I started volunteering with the Arthritis Foundation. I was like, oh, there are other young people. So now the world is so different now, 20 years later, that you can just connect so easily online and connect through a podcast, connect through research and events. I think that's so exciting. And I think it's true that, teens don't always get a voice. You get the little kids. Everyone wants to hear from the little 5-year-old, and then everyone wants to hear from like the mid-20s person who kind of has figured things out. But that in between period of like your mid-teens to young adulthood, it is such a important area.
Yeah. And something else that kind of, I think, sparked Take a Pain Check was the amount of times that, like, even as a teenager, when I was 13, I went on Facebook and it said the group chats, kids get arthritis, but it was parents or older people running those group chats. And it wasn't any teenagers you could find that were in those group chats. And I just found it really frustrating because it's like, you're saying it, I understand it's like a parent support group, but you're naming it like kids get arthritis, and all of the ones that say like, oh, kids can talk, blah, blah, blah. It was just parents and adults telling, what's going on in their kid's life. And I felt like, now we need something where young adults and youth come and they talk about what they're feeling, because that's so important. And sometimes it's disregarded. Maybe just like a lot of the time it's disregarded. And so I find that podcasts like these and all this kind of, gives a different perspective.
Yeah, it's so true. And you mentioned that there's been a lot of positive responses so far. Do you have any examples? Oh, you did already share an example of people who've said that they feel more open now. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want specifics?
Yeah, sure. If you're comfortable sharing. Yeah.
Right. Sounds good. Just give me 1 second.
Yeah. I know.
I got one today, which is very interesting.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So recently on our most recent episode on Take a Pain Check, which I'll just pause in 1 second. We just got a comment from a mom, and she said, absolutely love the podcast and the mom you interviewed. Your questions were great. JRA is truly a family disease. This mom is me 36 years ago when my daughter was diagnosed. I did not see much change. And they're kind of just saying they were saying how amazing it was that the mom was in the podcast episode, was able to share so much, and she found it really relatable. And that's in the comment section, so people can check it out. But I also recently found like a youth who actually messaged me, and I was like, what? I didn't know that people felt this way about the podcast. And so I'll just quickly read that too. She said, "You're so inspirational. I hope that many people can just take a second and listen to what people are going through, spreading awareness and showing people that it is okay, and finally that there are people just like you that are going through this. Keep up the good work, and there should be more people like you in the world who want to make a better place." And I was like, what?
That's so nice. You're going to get so many of these. You need to start printing them out and putting them on your wall, or
right here on this wall.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think it's just the power of storytelling, right? The power of feeling seen. And I think so many people feel like they're the only one, like, oh, I'm a freak because I'm worried about this. Like I just posted about methotrexate because so many people are worried about taking it or scared to try it. And then so many people said like, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was being weak, so, and like, I just think it's great. Sorry, I feel like I'm not saying anything intelligent. I'm just like, good job. Keep up the good work. Yeah. And I'm curious, like, I think other people in the audience might be wondering, because I think a lot of them are kind of more in their 30s, potentially in 40s, maybe, but hopefully we got some young people listening. But what do you think has allowed you to feel comfortable sharing? Because I know some people have shame around having a chronic illness, or they just are shy. Like I'm not shy. But I know most people are a little bit shy about just talking. Like, have you always been just open and
No.
to public speaking and stuff? No. Okay. So yeah, tell me about your evolution.
I never wanted to put it out there ever, like ever. I was like, this is something I don't want to talk about. My friends can know what it is, but it's not something that I want to, like make a podcast about a nonprofit. No, thank you. Like, I'm scared to tell people about my arthritis because in grade 8, I dealt with so many like awful comments from people. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'll just keep this to myself. But through Cassie and friends and through, kind of advocating and making events for other kids that had arthritis, I was like, okay, I kind of got convinced by the people in there and they're like, you gotta let's start advocating for others. And that's when the podcast started. So the first time I actually started like putting it out there was this year, March 2021. So it's not like it's been like a really long time. And right. Like, sometimes I post on my story just, to put it out there, just to be like some promotion, but I still pray sometimes. I'm like, please make sure no one sees this. Like, I don't want anyone to see this. But, sometimes I've realized that, yes, sometimes I think that way, but I still post it because at this point in my life, I realized like, if you have an issue with it, then like, you don't belong in my life, I'd say, like if there's any problem. So, and I also think advocating is really good. And not only are you helping like yourself, but you're advocating for other people and you're advocating for a good cause. And so I think aside from me feeling like I'm terrified, I think now with the podcast, it's out there. So if anyone has a problem, I can't do anything about it. And that's just like, I don't know. It's definitely changed. And it was only this year that I started advocating. So it's not like it's been a very long time that I've put it out there.
Yeah, no, but I think that's so many good points in there. One of them I want to echo is like, sometimes actually just the act of putting something out there and realizing like, what is really the worst that could happen, right? The worst is you're going to get some troll saying like, you don't really have it, or you just need to try this herb or something. And then you're like, okay, or like on TikTok, sometimes I get comments that are like, you're weak. You shouldn't have to use like a jar opening aid. I'm like, okay, but all these things we're worried about happening, when they actually happen, and you realize, well, the world keeps spinning, it's not actually that big of a deal. So, I mean, again, not to minimize people who've been like seriously, like, hurt by things people have said online, but yeah, I think that's such a unique perspective because your evolution towards being open is so recent, like it's still fresh in your mind. So I think that'll be inspirational to people to know that, like, again, like I'm just a little bit freakish and that I've always just been like, not afraid of public speaking, not afraid of being, the center of attention. I joke it's because I'm a middle child. So I always had to be like, here I am, look at me. Otherwise you get overlooked.
I'm also a middle child, but I don't feel that way. I feel like I'm very like, reserved. It's been different, especially like now I have like this is like really weird. I made a TikTok about it, but it was like, and I think you might've seen it as well, but it was like, oh yeah, like me worrying about, telling people about my chronic illness, and now started a nonprofit charity organization about arthritis. And it's funny to look at it because I'm still afraid and I still wonder like, what are people thinking of me? And it's awkward sometimes because sometimes people just like check your Instagram stories and they see that you've mentioned your arthritis, but you haven't actually told them. And so you get into the awkward situation where they know about it, but you haven't said it directly.
Totally. Yeah, I totally know that feeling. It's definitely interesting. Like, I think even me being an out there person, I didn't talk about my arthritis that much in the past either. Like, and I think I just was a little worried people would judge me. I would talk about it like in really specific contexts, like volunteering for the Arthritis Foundation in the US, but I was just, I don't know, you don't want to be seen as weak, and I think it's such a paradox that actually when you share about it, people actually, the right people, like think about you as actually strong, for being open enough to, so although we shouldn't define our worth based on what other people think of us, but
it's normal. I feel like it's a natural human thing to do. Like you're always in the back of your mind worrying about what other people think.
Yeah. And that comes back to acceptance. Yeah. I'm very big on acceptance, just accepting that, yeah, I'm a human, I'm a social creature. Like, of course I'm going to worry what others think of me, but not letting that stop you from doing the things that you're passionate about. In this case, like advocacy and sharing stories. I think that's so great. And the other thing I want to make sure to ask you about is, you've been part of some patient partnerships and research projects. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was getting my joint injections, actually, it's like life changed that day. I saw a lot of researchers come up to me and ask me for my blood, saliva, and urine samples. And I was like, okay, like, why are they doing this? And so I asked them, and they're like, we're putting this in a bank. And I was like, why are you just like storing it? Right. And I found it really interesting that they were like doing research on all of this. So I actually approached them. And from there, I reached out to organizations and like support groups and some research projects that I got involved in. And so I've been doing that for the past year and a bit. And that's been very interesting, still keeping me going. And it's kind of like sparked my interest in pursuing a career in the medical field in the future. And so I'm currently a part of like several research projects, and I can specifically give some examples. So there's like the JIA option map, which is really interesting. Pretty much the research project is that they're trying to find alternative therapies, and kind of when you go through the application, so it's a website, then you're able to, pick what you want to do, like physiotherapy, whatever you want to do. And then you're able to bring it to your doctor and have a comfortable conversation with them about like, this is what the research project said, blah, 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 have those comfortable conversations. So I've been working on that with an amazing group at the University of Ottawa, which is where I study. I'm also part of this like PACER program through the University of Calgary in Canada. And it's basically where patients do research on patients. And so I'm conducting a research study about the transition from pediatric to adult care with four other members that also live with JIA, which is really cool. And we're conducting it on patients that have JIA and about their experiences. So that's been really interesting. And then over the summer, I was a research student at a research hospital called University Health Network. So that was really fun. And so I'm really enjoying working around the topic of like arthritis, because it's kind of like studying your own disease and figuring out like, things that I wish I had, working on it for the future.
That's so wonderful. And I think I've noticed that my friend Chronic Eileen in Vancouver, she's often posting about research in Canada. It seems that Canada might be a little bit ahead of the US, at least from what I've seen, in terms of engaging patients in research, because I think that's so important. And I can't wait to hear the results. I'm really curious about the one from the PACER one about the transition from peds to pediatric care to adult care. And I actually meant to ask you that earlier. So I'm glad you triggered my memory. What was your transition like from being a ped? Because just so for those of you who don't know, like who are diagnosed as an adult like me, when you're, younger than 18 and you get diagnosed with juvenile idiopathic arthritis, you're seen by a board certified pediatric rheumatologist, which is like a pediatrician with a special certification in rheumatology. But when you're an adult, you have to see a just general rheumatologist who's like an internal medicine doctor with a special certification in rheumatology. So you have to go from your pediatric doctor to now your adult doctor. How is that for you?
I actually have not transitioned.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's interesting because you're supposed to transition like 17, 18. I haven't transitioned yet. My pediatric rheumatologist wants to, still be with me, which is great. She's amazing. And I'm still kind of, when I hear some of the patients in the research project discuss their experiences and like hearing like friends and stuff discuss their experiences, it doesn't sound that great when you transition. But, with the research out there and the different programs, there are transition programs out there. So if you find the right place, and the right people, you'll probably succeed. I know I haven't been through it yet. We'll have to go through it very soon, but I haven't transitioned yet.
Okay. Yeah. And some of the fears, right, are just letting go of that relationship with your rheumatologist that you've had for so many. I mean, for me, like I always say I'm lucky because my rheumatologist, she was right out of her residency. So she's only like, I think she's 10 years older than me. So I'm like, okay, good. I'm going to have you until you retire. Like I'm going to move to wherever you go. No, but like, I'm so attached to her, And so I think that emotionally having to then say goodbye to that one doctor and have to form a new attachment to a new doctor can be scary, right?
Yeah. And sometimes even like in the environment, right? Like you're with a bunch of like people your age, and then you realize that adult rheumatology can be 18 to like 100, like that literally age gap. And you're sitting in the clinic and you're just like feeling really awkward because you don't see anyone your age. And so sometimes there are a lot of different factors that can kind of affect how you feel. Hopefully mine will go really positively.
Yeah. I have interacted with a lot of rheumatologists as just part of like my advocacy and volunteer work too. And they, there is a certain, there are stereotypes about different specialists, right? I don't know if that's the same in Canada, but in the US, there's like the kind of people that want to go into emergency medicine versus surgery or versus surgeons versus rheumatologists and dermatologists. And it totally doesn't mean that it's true all the time, but sometimes there are nuggets of truth in those. And and then the stereotype, the positive stereotype of rheumatologists is that they're very like brainiacs, like they're really fascinated by the immune system and how like these diseases come about and kind of cerebral. And I know, well, so with pediatric rheumatology, you have a pediatrician who has the reputation normally of being like loving kids and really outgoing and positive. And the rheumatologists are like, adult rheumatologists can be a little bit more cerebral, but like I, in general, find that they have a lot of understanding of the gray areas of medicine. Like some doctors, like I'll just be blunt, in my experience of gastroenterology, this is not true of all gastroenterologists. I have one right now that I really like, but previously I had two of them that were just very dismissive. Like, I did an endoscopy, you don't have anything wrong, you're fine. And then like 2 months later, oops, actually you have severe gastroparesis. Like, okay, well, then you shouldn't have told me that nothing was wrong earlier just based on one test. So whereas rheumatologists are more like all their job all the time is these gray areas of like, it could be lupus, it could be this, it could be that, like this medicine could work or it could not. So that's my long rant or happy rant about them. I hope that you have a good experience with your adult rheumatologist, because I've had some good ones, at least so far. There are some not great ones, and you always have the right, again, speaking of advocacy earlier, you have the right to get a second opinion. At least in Canada, can you get a second opinion? I'm not sure. In the US, you can. Okay. Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. Is there anything else you want to say about the transition, or like, are you nervous about it for yourself?
I'm not nervous yet because I haven't heard like the message where it's like, Natasha, you'll be transitioning soon.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not nervous yet, but I think it'll be different. I just, hope that it's okay.
Yeah.
I
think with all your skills and all your understanding of your disease, I think you will definitely land with a good one. Even if it's not the first one that you try, you'll land with a good partnership, because it really is important to see your doctor and medical team as like a partnership, not just like I just passively listen to them and do everything that they say,
Yeah.
So I know we're coming up on an hour, and I'm just really grateful for your time. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with the audience? This is your time to share anything. If you did want to speak about anything else, I just want to give you the platform.
Oh, thank you. I definitely say check out Cheryl's episode on Take a Pain Check.
Oh, yes.
Cheryl was also a guest on Take a Pain Check podcast. And so you can definitely check that out. Literally search up Take a Pain Check on Google, and then you'll be able to figure it out. You can stream Cheryl's episode on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that fun stuff. It's really interesting to hear Cheryl's perspective, because I got to interview her. So check that out. And yeah, let us know in the comments what you think about Cheryl's episode.
That's so sweet that you're taking the time to promote the episode with me. Thank you. No, you have a lot of good ones. I'm really, really impressed again that I actually didn't realize you had only started this in March 2021. I'm like, oh my gosh, you have been busy, girl.
Yeah. High school was fun than university, so I had more time at that point. See. But yeah. The thing is, like, I didn't expect it to kind of just like, hit, and it's like, go. Now, like, It's real. Like, you just kind of get into it and you're like, yeah, let's just like try this podcast thing out. And now it's like, what just happened? Like, now you actually have to like film all the time, but it's really fun to enjoy it. And I have like a lot of people behind the scenes working as well. So it's like, it's very interesting and fun.
You're really smart to get a team around you. Yeah. And to do it in seasons, I think that's a really good idea too, to give yourself some breathing room in between episodes so that you're not on, like, they call it the content treadmill. Have you ever heard that phrase? No. When you're like an online content creator, kind of like how we kind of are with podcasts and now, social media content and videos on TikTok and stuff, you can get on this treadmill where you have to feel like you keep needing to produce more and more and more. And it's good to give yourself like a breather. And I'm telling you the advice that I'm not very good at taking, but do as I say, not as I do. But Well, I'm really excited for your future. I feel so old saying that. But I really enjoyed talking to you today. And thank you so much for coming on the Arthritis Life podcast. And definitely everyone listening, make sure to subscribe and listen to the Take a Pain Check podcast too.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, bye-bye for now.
Bye.